Breaking news out of the NFL that nobody saw coming: the Houston Texans have just released safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson. 3 games into the season, gone. And now, the entire league, especially Philadelphia, is buzzing. Could the Eagles bring him back? Let's break this down, because this move changes everything. Fire fans, this one hit like a thunderbolt. Just hours ago, the Houston Texans shocked the football world by cutting ties with one of the most fiery, most emotional players in the league, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. This isn't just a roster shuffle, this is a headline that flips the script on both the Texans and maybe the Eagles too. Think about it. Houston traded for him this offseason. They moved real pieces, offensive lineman Kenyon Green and some draft picks, to bring him in. They even restructured his contract, converting over $6.5 million into a signing bonus. Normally, when a team does that, it means, this guy is locked in. He's part of our future. And yet here we are, 3 games into the year, and he's already out the door. That tells us something deeper must have happened, something we don't know about yet. Now, this isn't just about the Texans. This is about Philadelphia. Eagles fans know exactly who C.J. Gardner-Johnson is. They know the energy, the swagger, and yes, the attitude he brings to the secondary. This is the same guy who was flying around in midnight green, making big plays, and talking trash with a fire that the Philly defense fed off. And suddenly, he's available. For the Texans, this is more than just performance. Sure, he struggled late in that loss against Jacksonville. He gave up a couple of huge plays that swung the game. And yes, the Texans are 0-3, failing to finish games despite high expectations with C.J. Stroud at quarterback and DeMeco Ryans running the show. But cutting a player this talented, this early, especially after making a financial commitment? That screams of something behind the curtain, maybe locker room issues, maybe tension with the staff, maybe something we'll hear about in the coming days. For Philly, the question is simple: do you take the risk? Do you bring him home and inject that fire back into your defense? Eagles fans, I need to hear from you. Should Philly sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson back right now? Drop your take in the comments. On a scale of 1 to 10, how badly do you want him back in midnight green? When a move like this happens, fans and insiders all over the internet start digging for answers. And with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the theories are flying. Some point to performance, others to locker room tension, and some even believe he was ready to demand a trade. Let's start with the football side. Reports say C.J. wasn't picking up DeMeco Ryans' defense the way the Texans expected. The most glaring mistake? That late-game blown assignment against Jacksonville. He lined up at safety, was supposed to cover the inside man, but instead chased the outside receiver. That tiny slip turned into a gaping hole across the middle of the field. Trevor Lawrence spotted it instantly, delivered a strike, and the Jags scored a touchdown that swung the game. Houston lost by just a couple of points, and mistakes like that stick in a coach's mind. But it wasn't only about one play. Insiders say C.J. wasn't taking accountability in film sessions or in the locker room. And for a young team trying to build a culture, that's a major red flag. On top of that, Houston is getting back Jimmy Ward, a safety DeMeco Ryans trusts from his San Francisco days. That gave the Texans confidence to move on without C.J. Then comes the bigger story, the friction behind the scenes. Gardner-Johnson has always been emotional. Fans have seen it, the trash talk, the fiery personality, the outbursts on social media. It's part of what makes him special, but it can also create tension. According to NFL insider Aaron Wilson, C.J. wasn't happy with his role in the Texans' defense, and there was even talk he was close to asking for a trade. If that's true, this release may have been Houston cutting the drama before it got worse. And doesn't this sound familiar? Eagles fans know the story. C.J. has been through this cycle before. Great talent, but teams get tired of the baggage. In fact, this is now the 5th time in his 7-year career that a team has decided to move on. Saints, Eagles, Lions, back to the Eagles, then the Texans, and now he's on the market again. That's a pattern you can't ignore. The wild part? The Eagles themselves almost cut him last offseason before trading him to Houston for guard Kenyon Green. And what a disaster that turned out to be. Green didn't even stick with Philly's roster, bouncing between practice squad, active roster, and finally being cut to make room for a return man. Meanwhile, Houston traded for CJ, restructured his deal, and now they've cut him too. When you look back, that entire trade ended up being a complete wash for both sides. But here's the question burning in Philly right now: should Howie Roseman bring him back? Because for all the drama, the talent is undeniable. Twice in the last 3 years, Gardner Johnson was a centerpiece of an Eagles defense that went to the Super Bowl. The 1 year he wasn't in Philly, he was starting for the Detroit Lions, another playoff team. And it's not just about where he's played, it's about how he plays. He's versatile. He can line up as a nickel corner, roam the back end at safety, or move around like a chess piece depending on the matchup. He has a nose for the football, a knack for big plays, and the kind of swagger that can electrify an entire defense. He's one of those guys you love to have on your team because he plays with edge and confidence, and he isn't afraid to knock someone's helmet off if it sets the tone. So Eagles fans, I've got to ask, would you welcome C.J. Gardner-Johnson back despite the baggage? Do you believe his fire and playmaking are worth the risk? Drop your answer in the comments, yes or no, and tell me if you think Philly should take the GAM-C.J. Gardner-Johnson brings something you can't measure on a stat sheet: swagger. He's never afraid to stare down an opponent, never afraid to talk his talk, and sometimes a defense needs that edge. Back in 2022, the Eagles had it. That fire fueled the defense and gave them an attitude that opponents hated but Philly loved. When he left in 2023, the team missed it badly. That's why when they brought him back in 2024, it felt like the right move. And the production backs it up. In just 28 regular season games with the Eagles, CJ snagged 12 interceptions. That's not luck, that's instinct, anticipation, and a natural ability to change games in the blink of an eye. And when the lights were brightest in the playoffs, he showed up. Those kinds of players are rare, and when you find one, you don't forget it. But here's the tough part: with CJ, you get the big plays and the baggage. Behind closed doors, the Eagles' front office, coaches, and even some teammates had issues with him. From fiery clashes to social media outbursts, there was always tension. Right now, this Philly team has something special brewing. You saw it on that Jordan Davis blocked field goal return for a touchdown: the energy, the unity, the culture is strong again. Bringing CJ back could shake that foundation. And that's the dilemma. Because at some point, you are who you are. Gardner-Johnson's track record says he can light up a defense but also light a fire in the wrong way. If the Eagles do bring him back, there's another concern: stunting the growth of young safety Andrew Mukuba. Sure, Mukuba's had ups and downs, but he's made clutch plays too. He has versatility, ball skills, and most importantly, he's a high-character guy. Coaches don't have to worry about what he'll post online or whether they'll get a midnight phone call about drama. With CJ, that risk is always there. That said, there is a creative option. Philly's cornerback depth has questions. If they wanted, they could slide CJ into the slot, let Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean hold the outside, and suddenly the secondary looks airtight. That solves the corner problem without cutting into Mukuba's development. But then comes the question: does Vic Fangio want to deal with the headaches that come with CJ? From his past comments, it seems like Fangio values young, steady culture builders who can be long-term anchors. Cooper DeJean at nickel fits that mold perfectly, and Fangio loves what he brings. So here's where we stand: Gardner-Johnson gives you instant firepower, but at what cost to the locker room, the culture, and the future? Eagles fans, it's your turn. Do you want the fire and swagger of CJ Gardner-Johnson back in Philly, or do you trust the young guys to grow into stars without the drama? Drop a yes or a no in the comments, and let's see where the fan base stands. Now here's where things get really tricky. Even if the Eagles wanted to reunite with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, there's a major roadblock: the NFL rulebook. And this part could make a reunion almost impossible. Here's how the rule works: when a team trades away a player, they can't just turn around and bring him back. The rule says that player has to spend at least 2 full seasons away, or he must be on another team's roster for at least 4 games before he can return to his old club. And here's the kicker: Gardner-Johnson only played 3 games for the Texans. Not 4. Just 3. That's the detail that changes everything. Some people are already wondering if Houston did this on purpose. Think about it: if they kept him just 1 more week, and then cut him, he could have signed with the Eagles right away. Instead, they moved now, after 3 games, making it much harder for Philly to even consider a reunion. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's strategy. But either way, the timing is impossible to ignore. Of course, with the NFL's complicated rulebook, there could be loopholes. Maybe a contract clause. Maybe special language after a release. But as it stands right now, the door to Philly looks shut. And honestly, even if it was open, there's another side to this. Do the Eagles even need him right now? Reed Blankenship has been steady. Andrew Mukuba, while still learning, has flashed real playmaking ability. Sidney Brown can be raw in coverage and has missed some tackles, but the man hits like a truck and brings toughness to the secondary. This group is young, hungry, and starting to build chemistry. But football is a long season. One injury changes everything. If a safety goes down in a few weeks, then yes, you might make the call. You might take the risk, because CJ is still a proven playmaker with ball skills that flip games. He knows the locker room, he knows the defense, and he brings instant production. So maybe not today. Maybe not this week. But down the road? If disaster strikes, the Eagles could revisit the C.J. Gardner-Johnson question: rulebook or not. Eagles fans, let's settle this right now. Do you think the NFL's rules should block Philly from bringing C.J. back, or should the league let teams make their own call? Drop your take in the comments: fair rule or unfair rule?